Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this lesson on painting the sunflower and roses. I recorded this once already, but apparently it didn't get saved in Zoom, so I liked the lesson so much that I had to record it again. And so anyhow, I'm doing this again, and I'll probably do it better because I've had some practice. So first of all, I'm working from a reference photo that I took in my kitchen, and I cropped it to a square. And so you can do that by hitting edit, and then you hit the crop button. And up here, you'll see these little lines with a rectangle and smaller rectangles and a square. You can hit square, and then I've already done it, so I'm just going to hit cancel. And because I can only do it once, but then you get the shape of your canvas the way you want it. So out here I've got my colors. I've got this phthalo turquoise, which I'm going to be using today, and some dioxazine violet, and these are kind of the usual. Yellow ochre. I've got this cad yellow medium. I've got orange, cad red, viridian. I've got cobalt, ultramarine blue, and transparent red and brown oxide. And this is some permanent rose. And I've got out some dioxazine violet here. And one other color I need, I'm just gonna put that out quickly. Okay, so I'm back. I paused my recording and I put out some raw sienna and some sap green I added to the palette here. And yeah, so that's what I had forgotten. I kind of got ready the night before, and so I was probably half asleep when I was getting this ready. So I'm going to get a little bit of this transparent brown oxide and a little bit of this ultramarine blue, and I just want to get a nice thin layer to sort of gray this panel. And I'm using a Centurion linen panel. And you can get them even on Amazon, I've been told. And you can get them online at Jerry's Artorama. And so you kind of, they're really good. And I get the universally primed because then you can paint acrylic on them as well. And linen just gives your paintings kind of a different look again. I think it gives them kind of a classic look. Because you get that texture, kind of that linen texture shows through a little bit. But it's nice and smooth, but not overly smooth to work on. Okay, so once I get that down, I've gotten rid of that white, and I'm happy about that. Because now I'm not looking at that white canvas, and I'm going to use a paper towel. And a lot of my videos, the next thing I would do is kind of draw, you could kind of sketch where the sunflower is going to go. But I'm going to show you kind of a new technique, the wipeout technique. So I'm going to get my paper towel and just dip it in a little bit of this turp here. And I'm going to mark out where I want everything to go using the wipe away technique. So it'll be something normally I do the drawing or kind of a combo of both, but we're just gonna wipe this out, and you can kind of put in some of your strokes like that. And then if you get too much paint on your paper towel, just fold it again, and you can wipe out where that other sunflower is. And I'm going to wipe out where the pink roses are, then I'll get a nice clean spot for that rose. And I've got a little rose up there. And so if you're not wiping anything off, just switch your paper towel up again and just kind of go for it again. And kind of want these sunflowers to go off the edge a little like that. Okay, so now you kind of see your composition a little better, and you can kind of see where it's going and if you like it or not, almost as if you drew it. So, and another thing I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be doing some fun colors in the background. So now that I know where my bright colors are going to go and I don't want to get them dirty, I'm going to go get that. I want to add that phthalo turquoise in the background. So I'm going to get some of that phthalo turquoise and a little bit of that brown oxide, and just sort of brown oxide just kind of dulls it down a little. So I'm going to just put in some of that phthalo turquoise here and there, because I want that to show up later, even under where I'm going to be putting green leaves and everything. I want to have these bright colors showing through. And also some dioxazine purple. I'll put some of that in there. And it's just kind of a way of, trying to, it kind of mixes it up a little, so you're not doing the same thing all the time. And I like with sunflowers having these bright colors in the background. So I'm just going to put those colors in. And then I'm going to take my paper towel again and just kind of dust off some of those brush strokes here and there. So you create a nice kind of transparency wash with all those bright colors. And you can do this the same technique with acrylic as well. Just use the same color and block it in, or use some turquoise if you don't have this color. So now I'm gonna clean my palette off because I don't want those colors mixing too much with the yellows and stuff. So, and another thing, you want to keep this layer fairly thin because you are going to be putting yellow and pinks and stuff, and you don't want that to be that super thick and then muck up all your yellow paint. Okay, so I just think also it's a good activity in kind of painting what you want. You don't have to worry what other people think about you using these bright colors. Sometimes, I've been in the Scottsdale Artist School, and there's a lot of purists out there that won't even put that phthalo turquoise on their palette. So I just think you should paint what you want and with what colors you want and just have fun. And so I am going to just add one more color. I like to block in my sunflowers with some of this Indian yellow. So I'm going to get some Indian yellow on my brush. And what it does is it has sort of that glowing kind of orangey color that those sunflower petals kind of have at the bottom. So I like the way they look. So I'm just going to put in a few strokes. I'm going to look at the sunflower and kind of follow from the center where they're going, the direction that they're going. So I'm going to just put in a few of those strokes. I'm using a fairly large brush to do this. Might be too big. It's an 8. But these ones are kind of coming straight up towards you, so you can't see too much of what's going on there. And then these ones you're going to see the most of because they're going off in the distance here, and they're not the flowers tilted, so you're going to see less of the stroke here. But you want to get in a little bit of that warmth in there because later you're going to be putting those lighter brush strokes down to show off those petals. So I've added a little bit of that transparent red oxide in there. And I spent a long time trying to learn how to paint sunflowers because they were my favorite flower. And one of the things I learned is you need to get in these warm colors first in order to show off all the beautiful petals. So let's get that center. And also this class, I decided, to do the sunflower that has that yellow center. We always do the one with the brown. And because we love our sunflowers, we have to learn how to paint the yellow one too, the one with the yellow inside. Okay, and while I'm blocking it, I'm gonna get some of that permanent rose. And if you don't have permanent rose, you can also use some quinacridone red. Just kind of zoom in a little better on my camera here. There. Okay. So we'll get some of that pink in there for that rose. And up here. Blocking in those shapes. And there's one over here. I'll just sort of throw that in there. And this one is kind of squished into the sunflower, so I'll just kind of put some of that in there. And then we're going to be putting those yellow petals back over there. So don't worry if it looks kind of messy right now. And then we'll block in some sap green and a little bit of that. You can use a little bit of that transparent red oxide in there. And just sort of we'll mark off where some of these leaves are going to go. And again, I'm not going to put in exactly, I'm just going to make some loose brush strokes to sort of show off some lively action here. Just sort of put in some strokes and not doing them all the same direction. And put in the green behind that sunflower. And a little green up here. Want it to be very loose and just lively. Once you get it all blocked in, you can go and use your paper towel again to sort of lift off where you want some of those lighter leaves to go. And it gives you something to sort of see how you're doing here. With all the messy brush strokes, it looks like nothing at first, but then, you can pick out some of those lighter leaves and you get this sort of thing happening. And it just saves you a lot of time and creates a more kind of fresh painting when it's not so controlled. All the leaves aren't just, perfectly drawn in. So that's just a block in, so you don't have to panic. We'll get into a little bit more detail on the greens later. And then we'll wipe out some of this pink where there's the lightest part of the rose is sort of up here. And up here, there's some light hitting the side of these roses. So just, fold your paper towel and then just sort of lift off some of that. I'm not using any turp on this right now either. I'm just sort of lifting up. I'm lifting off some of that paint just with the dry paper towel. All right, so now you see you've got the basics here are kind of done. We blocked in all the colors and all the background, and now you can start in on some of the detail. So for the sunflower inside, I'm going to use some of this raw sienna, and I'm just using this brand Utrecht, which I got at I think I got it at Blick. And just get a little bit of that going because I want to, and I'll use a little bit of that transparent red oxide because I want it to be warm and deep around the edge, because it's way easier to use just that dark brown center sunflower, because you can really show the depth really easily with the dark paint color. But on this one, it's a little more challenging because you have to be more aware of the values that you're using. So I'm just putting in some of that, and then I'll get some of that Viridian in there, and I want to put in that green center there. And I'm going to put a little highlight of this cad yellow light. I'm going to mark off sort of some of the lighter petals here because I really want to give my eye that contrast of values to see where I'm at. So I'll put a few of those in just to compare. I have a little bit too much turp on these ends, so I'm going to just dab off some of that. I was painting this for the class on a nice big canvas, and then the whole video didn't record, so I went from canvas and I thought I'll do this one on this little linen panel. But whenever you shift gears to a different panel or canvas, you have to kind of adjust how much turp, or you have to adjust it a little to the surface, because this surface isn't going to absorb as much. So you just, on the one hand, it makes it easier because you don't have to use as much paint, and I'm just pushing down with my brush to make that thicker brush stroke, and then sometimes I'll push down on the outside and draw it into the center, so I can push down and then lift off so that it kind of pulls the paint down into the center. And I'll get more. So now you can sort of see the difference, and you have that sort of depth that you want. Add a little orange to that paint for these ones. Some of them are a little bit more orangey on the inside. So just going to add a little orange to my cad yellow and put a few kind of in between, add a few of those little bits of orange. And now that I've made a lot of these marks, I'm going to go and kind of blend those edges again. And kind of blend those in. Get some of these ones that are going off the edge here a little. And you can put some of that in as some of these darker colors in the shadows. So if you need to kind of separate some of the petals, just mix up some cad yellow and a little bit of this transparent red oxide, and you can kind of put in a bit of a shadow using that color in between the petals. And now I'm going to add some of the lighter colors to the inside. Oh, and I'll block in a bit more up here. This one, I don't really want it to be as bright as this font flower here. I want it to be kind of in the background more. Might even add a little bit of white to that paint, and just sort of adding white kind of dulls it down a little. And I'm leaving a space in between so that you can kind of see a bit of a light change. Like that. And I'll leave these tips like this until I get this flower in. I'll leave them kind of unfinished. But I can get a little white with my cad yellow light and just put a few brighter edges here and there. And I might even put a little bit of that into this side of the flower just to show that there's some light change here. You're getting the shadow up in here. I might use some yellow ochre. Yellow ochre is good for the shadows, and add a little raw sienna yellow ochre just to get that in there a little thicker. And in the center, I want to get some of that yellow and mix it in with you can mix the cad yellow light with that viridian and get that lighter center area there. Like that. And even add a little white to that. One side has a little bit of a highlight. Add a little white to that mix. And again, I always soften the edges a little because I don't want it to be, don't want your eye going too much to it. Kind of soften some of those edges off a little, and you can get some of that red oxide in there and just sort of go back in and punch in some of that shadow side there. If you look at the reference photo and kind of squint down, it's this side's more, it's got a real shadowy effect. And just do a little bit more, kind of comes around down there. And then later we're gonna add this whole kind of edge here of petals, but let's first go work on the roses and then we'll get that in. And then that'll really bring this side of the sunflower out. Okay, so you want to get a clean brush. And this brush might be a little too big. I think I'm going to use, let's see, a 6. I'll just rinse off my 6 here. What's this? What's it again? Yeah, I'll use a 6. So I'm gonna just get that cleaned off because I have lots of yellow paint in it. And I'm gonna go back to my permanent rose. And I'll put in some of those darker details in again along these edges. And you can use this to your advantage, the wipe off, so you can go in now and put in the darker shapes and leave the wipe away as your highlight, and you'll get a lot lighter than if you try to make a highlight using white and pink. If you just use this wipe away as your main highlight, you'll find it's brighter. Then so I'm just adding some of those darker parts there. And I'll add a few details up here. These ones, I don't really want them to be overly detailed. So I'm just going to put in just a little bit of something so that it's not just boring. You can tell they're the roses, but there's not like a lot of detail going on there. And then I'll get a little white and mix it into that permanent rose. And you can add a little bit of that underneath there. There's sort of that kind of that light white color coming up from below. It's sort of cool looking, like cool temperature wise. And then I'll get more white, and I might, attempt at making a little highlight here and there. And I'm just simplifying the stroke so I'm not getting overly detailed with the rose, because roses are, I find, the more I work on them, the more I start to muck them up a little. So I'm just going to put in a few details, but then I'm going to take a break and look at it, come back to it. Don't go overboard, because you'll start to lose the lighter and the darker values. So just sort of put in some of those details and then use my paper towel again and just sort of muck those up a little. And then I'm going to go back to my permanent rose, and I'll go back in and sort of put the dark spots back in again. Just gonna put in some of those rose petal shapes. And there's some of the darker details I lost there, so I'm gonna go put those back in again. And I'll get some white and some of the permanent rose. And just go back and kind of shape some of those triangular little petal shapes that are kind of out there. And then we can kind of put in a few up here. There's a little bit of a lighter shape right about here. And there's a little bit of a bluey purpley color down there. So I'll mix a little cobalt blue in there and put a bit of that kind of purpley pink near the bottoms of the roses. And then I'll just sort of blend that in a little. Add some white to that mixture and just add a bit of those cooler colors to the tips there. And go in and put a little bit of that permanent rose just in there, just to darken some of those. In between the petals a little. Just get some more of those petals going in the middle there. Okay. Now I just want to get in some more detail work on the green. So I'm going to go back and get my sap and some cad yellow light, and I'm going to dull it down with some of that red oxide so it's not so bright. And then I'm going to mix a few greens. So there's a warm green, and right next to it I'm mixing some Viridian and a little bit of white and a little bit of that red oxide just to create kind of a cool green. So the cool greens I'm going to use up here, put some of those in that sunflower up there to put the little spiky leaves on the back of that one. And you can even put a little dab of that in here. And this rose here, you could put a little one of those, you know, those little rose leaves that kind of wrap around the rose. Those are really pretty. I'll use those more in the distant roses just because it's a cooler green. And you could put in some leaf kind of showing up over here just to add something more interesting in that corner. And again, I'm trying to keep those brush strokes nice and loose. And I'm going to put in some of the, I'll use some of that warmer yellow mix here too, so I get a variety of greens. And I'm just putting in leafy type shapes. I'm not getting into the detail. I just want something lighter and just putting in some kind of random shapes that, and because I've got all this paint back there, it's already in the underpaint, it makes it really easy to just sort of pick out where you want some of these different green shapes. You can just imagine a stem in there, some of these rose leaves, just sort of put a few of those in there. And once you get a few brush strokes in there, you can go and take your paper towel again, and I'm just using sort of the edge and just sort of mess those up a little, just very lightly. I'm just taking some of that at those edges and kind of loosening them up a little. So now we've got these sunflower, the edge there. You could do it with a brush, or you could even take like a palette knife and just sort of put a couple petals over that pink paint with a palette knife. That way you're not going to get too much mixing in there. So that's one way of doing it. Just let me get more paint out. You always have to put way more yellow paint than you thought you were gonna use when you paint a sunflower. So I'm going to take some of that yellow and I'm going to add a little white to it, because I want to put I want to really make that sunflower pop. So I'm going to get some of that bright yellow, and I'm going to put a few of those petals coming off here too with that palette knife. Really want this painting to be kind of a little bit looser, so the palette knife kind of forces you to do that. So before I get too carried away, I can put a few thicker blobs of green in there too. You can really start to have fun with that. Okay, so what I'll do now is go back to my, what is this, number 6 flat, and I can just sort of brush in a bit of that just to, combine it a little. You can kind of blend it in a little. You don't want to do it too much. You don't want to blend it back in, because then you'll lose that thick paint. But you just might want to touch it up a little. And add a little bright highlight up here. And sometimes I'll put one or two of those kind of going through the center there. And you can add a little orange in those, because they pick up a lot of that glowing kind of look from the light coming through the sunflower the petals. So then I'll take some of that pink and put it on some of the edges of these petals, these leaves, just for fun. And I might even take that phthalo turquoise and a little bit of that red oxide, just to dull it a tiny bit, and put a few brighter bits in the background of that turquoise, phthalo turquoise, with some white. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This painting, I really wanted to show you how you can kind of loosen up your sunflower paintings. And, sometimes if you're in a bit of a painter's block, where you feel like you're not doing the greatest at painting and nothing you're painting is working out. I like to go and just paint something I really enjoy, like a sunflower or a chickadee or something. So one way to, if you struggle with kind of having that, painter's block or whatever, just paint something you really like, even if you've painted it many times before, because that's one way you can really kind of get back into it. Have little success, little successes here and there. So that's what I do. I just go, let's paint a sunflower, even though I've painted hundreds of them before. I just think it's a good way to get back in the game, And so I'll put a little dab of red here and there. Maybe those are too big. If it's too big, just get your brush and kind of lift it off. But I like the odd little bit of red. Some people they put orange dots, or you could even get some cobalt blue and put the odd bit of blue in the shadows, so you have all that pink. You could put some little bits of that purpley blue in there. And so I'm hoping that you enjoy this little lesson, and if you do paint it, make sure to post it on Bold Strokes so we can share your painting and see what you've done and learn from each other. And I look forward to seeing your paintings and seeing you in the next lesson. And thanks for watching.